Welcome to Executive Exchange Radio with moderator Joe Cristiano, America's corporate exorcist. Hosted by Dr. Jennifer Beaman and Jorge Gutierrez, trusted advisors to chief executives and business leaders across the nation. If you would like to add to the conversation, call 646-652-4620.
I don't hire people anymore, thank heavens. I'm out of that business. I have a couple of companies, but I have someone else handle that, But it must be very difficult to discern whether or not a person has been enabled or the person that you're hiring is one of those persons who hasn't graduated, college or maybe in high school, but will be a billionaire someday. And how do you do that, George?
Well, so let's break it down. I love the way you put it, and I mean this sincerely because it's very common sense. It's not that complicated. So you started by saying, you talked about having a mindset, and then Dr. Beaman, rightfully so, sort of guided towards attitude. So it's really about attitudes. Now, attitude is not everything. It just isn't.
That's correct.
So just because you have a good attitude is not a good predictor of, future success. But it is a starting point. It is very much a starting point. And then earlier we talked about, I'd rather hire somebody that's just got all the soft skills. Well, that depends. That depends on the position, that your company is currently looking to hire at. So if you're looking to hire a great problem solver, that is going from one industry to the next, for example, to the C-level position, or the chief executive position, or a CFO type position, or CO type position, they don't necessarily have to know how to make the widgets or how to paint the cars, because they bring in problem solving skills that are required at their level. Now, eventually, if they have any type of good attitudes, they'll learn the craft, because that's how they earn the respect from the rest of the team. So having a good attitude with the right set of skills and the right set of knowledge and then a good set of goals usually leads to, positive behavior changes that leads to improved results. So how do we know these things? Well, part of it up front, it's doing a better job, I think, organizationally, at understanding who these people are that we're trying to either hire or promote. Okay, so I think the first step is to really look at the HR departments and say, well, what are you interviewing? What are the questions that you're asking? Because a lot of times, a good candidate that prepares well for an interview will pass with high marks, and so the interviewer walks away thinking, well, this guy knows he hit it out of the park. Well, I want to know who crafted the questions for that interview and how those questions were framed, and what led the interviewer, to reach the conclusion that person was a good fit. So that's, I think, sort of the first step. The second step, to me, and Dr. Beaman and I are in agreement with this, is more scientific. And so if we're trying to hire an executive, at a VP position or even middle management position, then it's probably worth taking the time to do a personal inventory, and do a scientific assessment to see, how this person prefers to behave when in their natural settings or even when under pressure. And then what drives them? What is it that they're really motivated? Because when we can find out what those motivations are, then we can get through everybody's hidden agendas. And I've often explained it easily by saying if I'm trying to hire a VP of sales and that VP of sales is not motivated by adding economic value either to his life or to my company, then he doesn't belong in that position. He's no longer a fit. So send me the next candidate, okay? And then if I'm really trying to hire somebody at the VP or higher or even middle management, then I want to understand what that person values to be the most important, to make decisions. When the noise gets really hard, when the pressure is really on, I want to know what they revert back to when they make decisions.
Yeah.
I mean, do they go back to being empathetic? Do they go back to being sort of, pragmatic, or do they just, go into la la land, if you will?
Right.
Because what happens is, they freeze, because if they're too empathetic, they can't make a decision to save their lives. If they're too pragmatic, God only knows what they'll do. So you have to understand the whole makeup of the individual, before we start throwing salaries out there 6 figures and above.
But we make that decision pretty quickly. Don't we? I mean, we have an interview process. They fill out an application. They may interview the person at personnel department, a middle management person, an upper management person, whatever. Every company has its own sort of, sequence of things. But I don't know how you measure attitude. For example, I liken hiring someone the same as I would characterize your first date, your first date, you watch your P's and Q's and you're very gentlemanly and you're very nice and the whole bit, but after a while, your attitude changes, your behavior everything changes as you go down the line, right? And we've all experienced this. I mean, I'm an exception. I mean, I was perfect when I started, and my wife will tell you today I'm still perfect, but that's another story. I won't get into that. But so how do we know when the attitude appears to be correct? And I'm really not sure what an attitude is. I can understand mentality a little bit better, maybe because my father drilled that into my head. But how do we know that this attitude is not artificial, and he's not holding the chair for me, and he's not being polite because it's our first date, but on our fifth date, man, you don't want to be around this guy. How do we know that? That's always floored me. I've never come to a resolution on that one.
And it's like the honeymoon stage of a new hire.
That's right.
During the first few months, they're usually on their best behavior. They're putting their best foot forward, and they're trying their best. And that's usually when we see the best attitude.
Right.
But if we have done an assessment, we will understand what their inherent motivators are, where their real, genuine, true values lie.
Yeah.
Where their behavior and their communication patterns tend to be when they're under pressure and when they're at their relaxed mode. Because just as George was explaining, when the going gets tough, or things get a little bit rough, they're going to revert back. So if they revert back to something that is not conducive to our workplace, it's better to know now than when it happens.
Well, see, girls have an advantage in a way. If you're dating a guy for the first time, there's a good chance someone who knows him better than you do, or has dated him. So you can always call and say, "Hey, Margaret, I'm dating this clown. Tell me something about him." You can do that. But in business, but that happens. This is real life stuff. This is what they do. Girls have a network. Guys are too busy drinking beer, watching football games. We're goofy. We don't. Our heads are not on the ground. But in business, you don't have the luxury of calling up unless you know someone and it's confidential, asking certain questions, because there's all sorts of rules, regulations, and laws, and you wind up with 30 years in jail, and then George and I would be in the same cell for the next 10 years playing cards. We don't want to do that. I love George, but I don't want to play cards with him in jail for 30 years. So how do we get around that? How do we know that this person that we see here is in fact the same? Of course, we can have pieces of paper, we can ask certain questions, but we're limited in our scope as to how to really investigate this person, unless we want to hire an FBI agent, a private eye agent or something. Well, what's the answer to that?
I think it goes back to skills, Joe. I mean, everybody has to have certain skills. So the interviewer and the organizational leader also has to have some skills. And so they have to have communication skills. And that doesn't mean that you can talk a lot, and sort of, be very well, when you speak. You also have to have observation skills. You have to know what you're looking for. You have to understand the body language, and you have to be able to discern whether the person that is in front of you is selling you a bill of goods or not. Okay, so you can design certain questions that are leading questions, that are legal questions, that can help you to come up with some sort of conclusion.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes it gets difficult, but it gets difficult when you get some real good candidates. They have all those competencies that you're looking for, and they're not just necessarily, looking for another job. So if the person that you have in front of you is looking for another job, and that person is just probably not the right person. But if the person that is in front of you is looking for a career and is looking to come to your organization, and make a commitment for the long run and is willing to learn new things, those are indicators that you may have somebody in front of you, that may be worth, a second interview or even a third interview.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you about the fastest interview I've ever had in my life with a person. My wife is an audiologist, and I help open up actually 3 audiology practices for her. And in this one practice, she says, "Oh, someone's coming in to be interviewed to be the receptionist person and whatever, and the sort of office person." And I said, "Okay, fine. I'll hang around and I'll interview her and see if she qualifies." Well, this gal walked in. Madonna me. I mean, I'm telling you. You know what? Do I have to say any more when I say Madonna me, George? You know what I mean? Okay? Are you with me?
Yeah.
Are you following me? Okay? I mean, she walked in. What a knockout. And she had Texas clothing, sort of cowboy clothing on. Tight. I mean, her skin was screaming, And I looked at her, and my wife saw this look on her face. The look on my face was, "You're hired. You're hired." And I'm not kidding you. What she did. This is exactly what she did. She came out of the exam room because she just about caught the corner of her eye. She saw this one walk in, walked out to the reception area, physically turned the girl around, walked her to the door, opened the door, and pushed her out, closed the door. Now, there's a person who knows how to interview.
Yes.
Right? All right. And that's a true story. It's a God's honest true story. But let me ask you, before we finish up, when you have a client, how do you tell them, how do you coach them into learning what these skills are? I guess this is what you do. You have a person who's not expert in this area, but they really want to know better when they interview someone, because they all feel, I'll tell you, everyone who interviews someone feels somewhat incompetent. I always did, and I still do. But so you guys help companies look for the right things and coach them how they interview people and how to get the information they need with which to make a decision. How do you do that? And this will be the last one because we're out of time, by the way, so I'll let you go with it, Francis.
All right, so I'll do it quickly, and then Dr. Beaman can have the last word. But to use the example that you just shared with us, that individual might have been the best candidate coming in front of you.
I can guarantee you she was.
But she wasn't prepared because she didn't dress appropriately for an interview. So what we tell folks is, the first impression you're going to have is a visual. So you have to look at how the person, has prepared himself visually in front of you, okay? Because usually when a person is well dressed or ill dressed or however they're dressed, it's usually an indicator of how they're feeling inside, what their state of mind is, if you want to go back to that mindset. So a person that is eager to land a good position in a new career usually comes up with a good haircut, with a good hairdo, with a nice suit, with the right colors, with the right shoes. So for example, if you're wearing a nice shiny suit and a nice, tie and a good haircut, but you're wearing tennis shoes that got holes in them, I would do the same thing that your wife did. I would turn him around and say, the meeting's over. You're not prepared.
Right.
So we coach them through the different things to look at and understand, before they can keep going forward.
Yeah. Well, Jennifer.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
this was
that.
a fun one. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I'm glad that attention is to both. We need soft skills. It is not a buzzword. It is scientifically proven, which is obviously for another show, but it complements and it enhances the hard skills, the technical and cognitive skills that an individual needs to conduct their work. Fail-safe leadership really requires, it's a constant endeavor. That's what we're here for, is to coach leaders to help, they want to see the bottom line. That's what we're here to help them through. It starts and ends with leadership, but the goal and the intent is for results. And it's through an investment in people and really an investment in our future and in the organization's
Yes,
future.
it certainly is.
So
And
thank you.
it's
Thank you both.
yeah, you blow that one, it's very, very costly as well. We didn't talk about the cost involved, but it's worth every penny
Yeah.
to invest up front rather than wait
Yeah.
6 months and said, boy, we made a big mistake. Well, we're about
Exactly.
well out of time. I want to thank you very much, Dr. Beaman and Jorge Gutierrez, for being on the show. I enjoy hosting the show with you guys. I learn a heck of a lot, and I'm sure people who are listening in, do the same. So thank you very much, and I guess we'll be putting out a notice very soon as to when our next broadcast will be, probably in about 2 weeks. Am I correct?
You're correct. You're absolutely
Okay.
correct.
All right. Well, I'll see you guys
Sounds
then.
good.
Thank you so much.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Thank
bye-bye
you.
now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
you.